Dr. Mark Changizi here with your Science Moment. Today I'm going to talk about Second Amendment and school shootings, which came up recently. And I'm not going to really get into it deeply, but I just want to point out a kind of inconsistency among those on the right. So folks who are traditionally Second Amendment defending, and I am very much so. And a lot of these folks are often Christian, some of the folks on the right, some subset. And whenever there would be these mass shootings, which is itself a kind of moral, social contagion of sorts, which is a whole other kind of topic. And, sometimes they were Christian, sometimes they were just crazy, sometimes there's all kinds of types over the years that did this. But often those conservative, sort of Christian conservative types, when the left would say, "Oh my gosh, these are Christians, and you gotta stop the Second Amendment, you gotta get rid of all guns, and this is because of this Christian kind of far right attitude, and blah blah blah. These people are sick that they are pushing, all that kind of attitude." And what was your response? It was like, no, the Second Amendment is crucial, and you don't want the government in charge of who can and who can't, and all the kind of standard verbiage. But this week, when a person, a lady who was trans, a trans man, supposedly, I don't even know if that's true, but it was perceived as such in these discussions, and suddenly the Christian conservative kinds of movements, which are nominally supportive of Second Amendment, suddenly are like, oh, well, they shouldn't be allowed to have guns. Second Amendment shouldn't apply to them, right? Trans people shouldn't have the ability to have guns. How quickly one can turn when it's one's political opposition which is in the same boat. Now you realize we just underwent 3 years where folks on the COVID side, in terms of another kind of microcosm, in this case it's a macrocosm because the entire earth was involved, they came to believe that deniers, right? They came to believe that anti-vaxxers, anybody who had any substantive opinions about the vax or thought there was just really no reason for me to take it, this is a mild virus, you were mentally ill. You had a diagnosable illness. There's actually articles hither and thither pushed by those that were pro-lockdown, pro-vax, and so forth, that you were mentally ill in a nameable way, right? It was bullshit, right? It was all entirely bull. But you can see there's always motivations for attributing mental illness to your political enemies. You don't want to fall for that. Now, there's genuine mental illness, and I think, there's genuine mental illness, but these kinds of things with 99.9% of the trans community, these are just people that are making decisions, and some of this is itself a social contagion. It's a whole big topic, but, this is not just something you're born with to be trained. These are complex psycho-cultural forces that are involved in these things, but the individuals are not mentally ill. They said the same thing about homosexuals, right? They said the same exact thing 40 years ago. Now you're saying the same thing, and you yourself have been subject to the same thing in many cases. The Second Amendment doesn't get thrown out just because they're your political enemy, and be constantly aware of your own biases in these regards, right? That should be always foremost on your mind. Am I thinking this just because I don't like that group because they're my political opponents? Right? That should always be on your mind. In fact, that should especially be on your mind if you're ever supposing that some group or some person should not get certain kinds of rights. You should be 1,000 times more wary when you don't like that person or that group because they're your political opponents. Right? That's exactly when you need to worry that what you're saying might be biased. And that was your Science Moment.